Last time on Doctor Who. The Doctor got brought back into his home planet and gets put on trial. It seems he's been found guilty and now has to suffer the sentence of his exile to Earth. But it seems he won't be continuing it as Patrick Troughton. What will happen next? Hello and welcome back to Pertwee Month. Now, we've had our Lords and our Masters and our unit dating controversies, but now I want to take you all back to the beginning of the era and try and explain why I love Spearhead from Space. For those of you who don't know, Spearhead was the first serial of the 7th season, which was broadcast from the 3rd of January to January 24th, 1970. It was a 4-part serial written by Robert Holmes and directed by Derek Martinez. Due to a strike, all of the studio filming had to be abandoned, which meant the serial had to be done on film, which has made the serial the only one to have a separate Blu-ray release of the classic series, apart from the TV movie as well. It is also the first to star John Pertwee as the Doctor, and the first to have Caroline John as new companion, Dr. Liz Shaw. Right off the bat, I have to say that John Pertwee just clicks straight away with his Doctor, and his post-regeneration story is an achievement to the actor himself. And yes, I can agree that there are some elements of the Doctor that are still to come, so that they have those scenes later on in his run, but just like his successor, John really hit out the park, and it was all from his confusion of how to play the character after having two magnificent performances from two magnificent predecessors. So this is a real risk onto himself, and it played off brilliantly. Caroline John plays the ever-so-great Liz Shaw, a person with a quizzical eye for the unknown, as she is able to work with John's Doctor very well, as they are able to build a bond that is very believable, especially in the scene where she steals the TARDIS key from the Brigadier for the Doctor, who she has only seemingly just met the same day. It is of course a shame that she only lasted this season, as she was a bit of a different side to the Doctor companion duo. Nicholas Courtney as the Brigadier is fun to also see return. I personally loved his character in The Invasion, and it was great to see that he got more to do in this serial. Unit in general has a lot more to do, and works well with a lot of the action and suspense used towards them. I would have to say that the weak link in Unit is Captain Monroe, who's the second in command of the Brigadier in this story. It just doesn't seem to have the same kind of working relationship as the Brigadier would have to Captain Mike Yates or Corporal Benton. Which comes to show why didn't he just get Benton back in? He was already in The Invasion, and he would have worked well in this story. I would also like to commend the writing by Robert Holmes, who surely didn't have the most easy job at the helm. Not only did he have to bring in a new era, but he also had to bring himself up from the previous serials that he wrote, the Crotons and the Space Pirates, which were not received positively as his later ones, so it was a chance that they had to take, and the result of that was one of the best written scripts of the era. It really allows to serve the purpose of an alien invasion story, a new Doctor story, and a new beginning all in one, without it being very underdeveloped and rushed. Deep breath. Also, the direction by Derek Martinez should be praised as well, with most of it filmed on 1970 16mm film, and with there being no actual studio filming due to the BBC strike, Derek had to do with everything being filmed on location and really having to do without the comfort and steadiness that a set can give to the director, especially back in the times of the multi-camera setup. Many of the locales and locations seem more lifelike because they were allowed to be, such as the hospital, which was a BBC training house, and the plastic factory, which coincidentally was actually a real one. However, every story there has to be negatives, and sadly this story has some. Firstly, the Autons aren't particularly scary in this story. Well, the plastic look to them does still send a slight shiver up my spine, but the way they move and act seems a bit too fluid and almost like stuntmen dressed up in prosthetics and outfits. This is something that the later appearances in the new series did get right over this one, as they became more clunky and more realistic towards the outer of the appearance of Autons, almost like shop windows dummies had actually come to life. Secondly, when we see the fake replacements that the nesting duplicates use towards the humans, they unfortunately do look a little bit waxy. This is the case of the fake version of the Major General Scobie that we see in Part 3 and Part 4. However, I will say with Channing, it works because we don't get to see the real version of him as we see in the end. We never actually do find out if he had a real version of him. Now, I can also place the new series in this because they really didn't actually learn this mistake until the Pandorica opens. Lastly, I'm not too fond of how the story doesn't get resolved properly. Either it's off screen or resolved too quickly, as I did really want more scenes of the trio, the Doctor, Liz, and the Brigadier, which we don't get much of in the season overall due to the fact that the next stories have to find a way of splitting them up, so not to have that much interaction, but unfortunately it couldn't have been improved on. Out of the 4 episodes, I'd have to choose Part 4 as my favourite one. The first 3 have some great moments and great suspense, but the 4th and final part is where the story reaches the apex point, with the start of the takeover of the fake Major General Scobie, and the Madame Tussauds scene where the Doctor and Jo have to hide from Channing, and basically all the factory stuff, which is pure Doctor Who at its best, as it could have everything you want in the story. Some action provided by Unit and Brigadier, some intelligence and scientific experimentation with Liz Shaw and the Doctor fighting off the nesting consciousness, and the best lines to end on. All rather magnificent, if I say so the least. But my favourite scene is the one when the Doctor meets up with the Guard in Part 2, played by the uncredited producer of the series at the time, Derek Sherwin. The comedy, the pacing, and the fact that it's a John scene just makes it all seem a lot more better because it uses comedic timing to get something that later on probably would have filled about 5 minutes by itself if it had been done in the Baker era. So it's just one of my favourite scenes from the Pertwee's era, and I always show it to people whenever they want a short but sweet representation of what his Doctor did. So yes, if you haven't gathered, I really like Spearhead, and while yes, it does have its flaws in the villains and the fact that Part 1 really doesn't do anything in the long run, it still has one of the best performances in a post-regeneration story, one of the best companions in Liz Shaw, thrilling writing that is able to hook viewers in, no matter if it's 1970 or 2020, great direction of a story that was faltered by stuff that wasn't under the producer's control, and it is still a fantastic introduction to one of my favourite Doctors, though he's not my favourite as he's able to start out his exile to Earth with some style. Anyways, thanks for sticking around and I hope you enjoy the rest of Pertwee Month. Goodbye.